Hey there guys, it's TC Made with TC Gaming. I recently put out a poll and asked the audience what they wanted to see next, and overwhelmingly it was an Unreal Engine 5 project from the ground up, and the genre is going to be a basic RPG. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by launching our Unreal 5 engine and creating a new project. So I'm inside of the launcher. I go into Unreal Editor and launch that, and it's going to give me a couple of different template choices. I'm going to go to games, and you could start with a first person or third person project, but I'm going to start with a blank project. I'm going to put this in my D drive, and we're going to call this UE5 underscore RPG. And I'm not going to have on any starter content or anything like that. It's just going to be a blank project. Now, the first time that you create a blank project, what Unreal Engine will do for you is it'll bring in a default map and create a basic scene. With lighting and things like that in there. So what we're going to do is, instead of using their map, we're going to go up here and do a blank level. So we're going to go File, New Level, and we'll just start out with something that's empty. We just hit the Create button here, and you'll see there's nothing in the world. What we can do now to populate our light is, if we go up into our UI in here, there's a couple different tools and things up here. And one of the things that we want to do is grab in this window, we can go up to Environmental Light Mixer. So what Environmental Light Mixer will do is it'll give you a real quick way to create all the different objects that you need for your lighting. So we're going to say create a skylight, an atmospheric light, and we can get volumetric atmosphere and height control and all these different things. And they'll bring them in for us by just doing that, and you'll see right away we have a lit scene now. We can take all these different things that are part of this and organize them a little bit better. So we can actually go up here and say Create Folder. And I'm just going to call this Lighting, even though I'll just call it Lighting and Sky. And then we can grab all the things that go with that, Shift Select, and bring them into that folder. So that way when we collapse this, we don't even see those elements. The other thing we might want to do is, on each of these things, just to be a little bit more aware of where they are, you can grab a hold of these things. I actually ended up with two directional lights in here somehow. So I'm going to see if I can go to Edit and delete one of those. So I go to Directional Light, my Exponential Height Fog. I'm just going to pull these things to separate them a little bit, so that they're not stacked up on top of each other like that. And volumetric clouds, I'll just move that up a little. Okay, so now they're just kind of spread out a little more. That's all we're doing there. And our directional light, actually I'm going to move this up above the directional light, because normally you'll play with the directional light probably more than anything else. Our directional light can be given orientation and rotation to give you, where the light's coming in from. That's why it's directional. And what we want to do is go in here. We're going to create a new content map folder, and we're just going to call this Maps. And we're going to name our map. We're just going to call this RPG underscore map. And hit save. And now every time we want to come into the game, we want to open this map so we can continue to edit it. So we're going to go up here and we're going to say Edit Project Settings. And under the Project Settings, under Maps and Modes, we can go in here and select RPG Map for both our default game map and also our default editor startup map. So once we make those changes, we can just hit Save there. Also, inside of our map here, we're going to go up to this little thing that says Quickly Add to the Project. And we're going to come down here and just do a basic shape. And we'll just put a sphere in here. And by looking at the sphere, we should be able to see that this is initially spawned at 0, 0, 0. Let's go 0, 0, 0. And then if we grab our directional light, what I was saying earlier is we could rotate this. And by rotating our light, you can see how the light source and the direction is spilling down onto that object. Kind of shows you where the light's coming from. So I'm going to set mine right around -50 there, and just give us kind of a light in there from the west, the northwest. And then again, I like to hit save quite a bit, so I'll be doing that all throughout the series. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to create a landscape so that we have something to actually play on. So we're going to go over to our select mode, and we're just going to go to the landscape tool. And we're just going to leave these default right now. We can come back to these some other time and visit them if we need to, but I'm just going to go in here and hit create. And it should just give us a nice default landscape in the world. Give it a second to populate all that, and of course prepare shaders. And so now we have that landscape. I'm going to grab the sphere that we made earlier. See if I can even see that sphere. Actually, I think it's disappeared unless I go back to select mode. We can grab the sphere and drag it up above where we were before. Hitting the N key will drop it down to the surface. And now that I see where our landscape is, what I want to do is actually move some of these other objects up even further. So I'm going to zoom out a little and just select these and drag them up and out of the way, just to give me some more space in here to work with without being right on top of those things. And that's our directional light. We'll pull that on up to there. Shouldn't have any impact on it as long as it's in the world. And then we're going to save this, and now we have our first landscape in. Now if we go back into the landscape tool, you'll see this big ball on here, and if I right click and hold down, I can pan around. I can also look down and hit my S key to zoom out a little bit. I can hit my W key to zoom in, and if I roll my mouse wheel up or down, it increases or decreases the speed with which I am panning and zooming in and out. This will become a little bit more helpful in a second, but you can also use your A and D keys to move left and right, and your Q and your E keys will also move you up and down, almost like a page up, page down type function. So what we want to do in here, we are in sculpt mode right now. So if I hit the left mouse button and I hold down on that, you should see that this will allow me to start to sculpt. And you can pick, see how it's warped that little thing up a little bit, right? I can do that. So what that'll do is it'll change the height of the surface, and it's pretty aggressive if you continue to hold on there. And I think you can hold shift and go in the opposite direction like this, and then of course you could go back to not holding shift, and you can smooth these out and bring them up again. So you can play around with these and get yourselves all kinds of landscape options. And again, by zooming back a little bit, I can go and I can work at a much larger scale. Go here and populate that with some raised hills all the way around you. What a lot of game designers will do, I'm not doing this in any particular fashion here, but what a lot of game designers will do is they'll put like hills and mountains and things like that way off in the distance of wherever you're working, so that in the distance you'll see things that create the illusion of a much larger world than you're actually in. And it makes it feel like you could actually, run way out in the distance and go somewhere else. But a lot of times it's just there for giving you that again, suspension of believing that there's a large world at play out there. And the other thing, there's a couple of game designers that talk about that are really, really talented at how they build those things. Okay, so if I go back out to here, go back out to select mode, you can see it kind of just left us with some depressions in there, deep hills and valleys and stuff. These are, again, I wouldn't necessarily leave it like this. I'm just showing you that that's what you can do with it. Okay. Also in landscape mode, we can use this other tool over here called the flatten tool, and we can change our brush size. So what I did is I just went to flatten, cranked up the maximum brush size, and just went through here and flattened that out. You can adjust your brush size here and the strength of the brush over here. So if I turn this down a little bit and go back to sculpt again, you can see that it'll be pretty aggressive there. If I turn the tool strength down considerably, it's still kind of aggressive. Let's see what it does this way. Yep, very much so. So I don't really care for how hard it is to work with those things, but if you gently like tap and move, it doesn't seem to be too bad. And again, you can change that brush size. Now, if you don't like what you have here, you just put it into flatten mode and you can flatten it back out. Okay. So again, what a lot of people will do is they'll create like a small area around the character. So they would just come out here and kind of go like this and create this like larger area around you. And then you can also use the smooth to kind of give it like rounded edges and stuff like that to make it a little bit better. And a lot of times you're just going to download somebody's material, auto materials and things like that to make this work out really well. I don't know what I just did there, but let's just undo it. And you can see now I just have this little gradual, like, hilly slope. Nothing real crazy, but that's just a little bit about the landscape tools. What I was saying is, going back out of here, that's the basics of like how to get a thing populated in here and kind of get started with some stuff. But what I would do in most cases, I would just go to the marketplace and I'd find assets that already have a lot of these things done. So for our RPG thing, I think our real focus is on how to make the character have stats and attributes and things like that, and then how to pick up and equip weapons and other things, So there's a little bit about Unreal Engine 5, and we're going to move into actually importing some assets that we can use to start building levels and to start actually working with our characters. If we open our Unreal Engine launcher and we go into Marketplace, what I want to look for is a couple of things that will make this very easy. We're going to go Infinity Blade. And in Infinity Blade, what we want to do is we want to find a couple assets from here that we're going to bring in. I think I'm going to bring in... Actually, let's go to Soul Cave first. So look for Soul Cave. And Soul Cave is going to be a spot where... Not Soul Cave, but Soul Cave is going to be a spot where we're going to bring this in, add to project. We're going to go UE5 _RPG, add to project. And then we'll go back here and we'll look for Infinity Blade. And under Infinity Blade, you have a couple of different warriors and adversaries and effects and things like that. We're going to get the weapons for now. There's a nice little array of weapons in here. So we're going to go into those and say add to project, and same thing. I'm just going to type in here UE5 _RPG to find that quicker. And so we'll add it to that project. And then I also want to go in here to the free, we'll go to free, permanently free collection. And inside of the permanently free collection, there's a lot of really good assets in here. And we're going to go, I think it's around page 3 or 4 in here. Yeah, looks like page 3. There's a thing called Ancient Treasures. We want to grab this and say add to project. We're going to put that into our UE5 RPG project. And also in that same spot, sometimes if you hit back, it'll actually work. Other times it will not. But in this case it did. So we got Ancient Treasures from Decagon. We're also going to get the free Fantasy Weapon Sample Pack. Actually, we probably wouldn't need it if we have the Infinity Blades ones, but this has a couple of other things like shields, just in case we want to do some shield stuff. So we're going to add that to our project. And we'll do that there. And go back again. Same spot. We're going to go in here and look for Protofactor Quadruped Fantasy Creatures. Add that to our project. And let's see if there's anything else that we need for now. I mean, we can always come back and add more things later. I think we're probably in pretty good shape here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Soul Cave, and we're going to put a dragon in Soul Cave, and we're going to have our character go and find a sword, or buy a sword. Well, actually, probably just for this, we'll just go and locate a sword. We'll use it to kill some basic creatures or enemies or whatever. Once we get inside of the area where the dragon is, then we'll go and we'll slay the dragon. And along the way, we'll gain some experience points and level up our character a little bit or whatever. So I'm going to go back one more time. And the other thing I want to get in here is, actually, let's search for Infinity Blades again. Because in the Infinity Blade Adversaries pack, you can see that there are these other little creatures in here. You know, like some of these guys. And there's spiders and stuff like that. So we'll bring some of these in so that we also have something to battle against, to get to the dragon. So we'll add those in as well. And just give all that a second to get in there. If we go back to our project, what we'll see is that these things have been getting added in. Now, what I was saying about the soul cave or all these other things, like, building this, I'm just showing you a little example of how to go in there and light this up and bring your stuff in. But typically, if you go to maps or anything like that, so if I go into soul cave, all that stuff's already done. It already has all my lighting in it. It's already got an environment built, and you can go in there and move things around. But it's kind of fun to know a little bit about these and how to build a level from the ground up if you want to do something outdoors. But like I said, typically you'll also be able to just go grab something that's pre-made as a starting point. So I think the intent of this series really is more like about the character and things like that, as I said earlier. So we'll focus on that type of stuff. Okay, and while that map's loading up, let's actually go get somebody to go running around in there. So we'll go back to our Epix Games launcher, and let's look for something called Paragon. And in Paragon, we're going to go down and find somebody to be our game hero. I've always been a fan of the Paragon Greystone character because he already has a sword and everything. But let's see, there's another couple of characters who might fit the part. We have Gideon. Let's see what Gideon looks like. He kind of looks RPG-ish in some of these outfits. Maybe none of those. Let's see, who else is there? I'm just doing this while those things are loading in the background, so it can really be any one of these characters. Doesn't really matter. The nice thing about these characters here is even if you're going to use your own character, these characters have a lot of great animation data that's in them and also a lot of great effects and things like that. So you may want to leverage some of the stuff that comes with these characters and put them on your own. I'm going to go a little closer down here to 3. Nothing in there. Oh, we'll just get Greystone and add him to the project. And we can always take his stuff and get rid of it and add other things on there. I'll show you how to do that too. It might be a good example. So we'll add him in as well. And let's go down and see how we're doing with our soul cave. I'm going to let this compile for a second and I'll be right back. Okay, you can see here by opening up the Soul Cave map, we already have a lot of stuff that's done in here. And let me just zoom out of here real quick. You'll see outside of the map area, I just basically tilted my camera and right-clicking and holding the S in. They just have a floor plane and then they've buried it in these rock structures so that the inside of this, if you look around, the inside of this basically looks like a cavern that you can walk around in. That's like if you go in here, there should be a start in here somewhere, usually. Again, just closing some things up here. So yeah, if you go to the player start, wherever this is, or wherever it was, if I hit play in here, I'm kind of in, I don't have any controllers or anything turned on because we started with a blank project, right? So what we can do is open up this Paragon Greystone folder real quick. And actually he might still be importing in there. Let's go look. Yeah, he actually just got done. So if we go back to the Paragon Greystone folder, see if he was added in. I don't see anything in here. So hold on one sec. Okay, I just refreshed it because I had jammed these in here while everything else was coming in. So I'm going to go into my Paragon Greystone characters. And down into the Heroes folder in the Greystone, you'll see that I have a Greystone player character and a Greystone NMBP and all that kind of good stuff. What I'm going to do is in my world settings, if you don't see this, you can go over to the window and turn on world settings. I'm going to go in here and there should be a game mode override in here. I don't see one yet. We'll make one. But in the Greystone player character, I can just go over here and say under selected game mode, under my default pawn class, and I can either highlight this and hit this little arrow, which will pull that character into this, or I could just open this drop down and go find him from the list in there. So I'm just going to put him in, and we're going to let these shaders compile. And I'm just doing this to get you up and running real quick. Now, I know we're doing a ground up, but I think, again, like I said, the ground up portion of this is going to be more like adding components to the character for RPG stats and things like that. Some of this other stuff we can do in another series, but don't think it would be the same as like an RPG series per se. Okay, now that our Greystone character is compiled, if I just go over here and hit play, you'll see that he jumps into the level. This is a little dark in here, I understand. We haven't really done anything with the lighting, but I can't move left or right with the camera. I can't do any WASD movements with this because there's no controller turned on this because, again, we started with an empty project. Okay, so a real quick fix for this, I'm going to hit Shift Escape. And what I want to do is I want to go into that Paragon Greystone character hero Greystone animation blueprint, or character blueprint rather. And what you'll see here is we don't have any of the input action events that are referenced in here. So there's a jump, a lookup, so on and so forth. So if I go over here, there's input action jump doesn't exist. Well, if I go to the project settings and I open up my project settings, then what I should be able to do, we're over there, actually in this other window, so we'll just drag this down. So you can see project settings here, and we'll go to input, and if I go in here to action mappings, so there's an action and axis section. So if you go in here, this one here is called an input action, right? That's an action, not an axis. So we go to input action, and we want to put something here called jump. So if we go action mappings and expand this out, we're just going to call this jump, just like it is in the thing. You roll this out, and then you can hit this keyboard and hit the space key, and that'll automatically assign a space bar there. If you don't want to do it that way, you can also come down here and go down to keyboard and find space bar in there, and select it. Either way works. But if we go back here to Greystone character now and we hit compile, you'll see that that input action jump has now been resolved. So if we hit the space bar, it'll trigger stop, and when we let go of it, it'll stop jumping. Okay. Now we have another one here called look up, which is an input axis. So we want to go to the input axis. We're going to go in here under the axis mapping, and we go open that up, and we're going to call this look. Was it capital U? Yeah, capital U. So axis look, capital U, and then a P. And so for looking up, this is an axis off of our mouse, and it's we're going to go mouse, and you have an XY component to the mouse, and then you also have a left and right mouse wheel. So this is our mouse X and Y coordinates that we want to put in here, and we want to put actually two of these, one for a negative and one for a positive. And actually, this should just be mouse Y, and then -1 for here, for lookup. And again, we can go back over here and compile, and that should go away. And then we have one for input axis to turn, and that one we can go, and that's going to be, add another axis mapping here. We're going to call that turn, and this one's going to be the mouse X. And that's just going to be a scale of 1. Compile, and that'll go away. Input action reset VR. If you're not using VR, you can just delete these. We're not going to use VR for this project. We have another input axis for lookup rate, rather. And this is all gamepad input. So if you're not going to use a gamepad, you could also get rid of these. But there's a high probability that you will play these with gamepad controllers, because typically you're building for something that could be played that way. I don't know about RPGs, you have a lot more keyboard input, but let's just go ahead and configure it anyway. And for that one in here, we're going to go look up rate. And for that one, that's going to be your gamepad. Should be your right thumbstick. I think it's your Y-axis. We leave that on with a scale of 1. Again, we go back over here and hit compile. And then we have a turn rate, which is also another input axis. So we have an input axis map here. Okay, so our lookup, or turn rate rather, turn rate would be our gamepad right thumbstick for the x-axis of a scale of 1. And then we also have our keyboard where we can use the keyboard left. And the left is going to be a -1. And the keyboard right will just be a regular 1. And that'll give us our turn rate variable. Again, we can go back here and compile, and that should go away. And then we have a move right and a move forward. And we can go back to configure those. So our input axis for move right. And now this one can be our keyboard A key, which is our WASD movement. So if we do our A key, which is on the left, so that's a -1. And then we want our, you hit the little plus button here, get another one. So we'll do our keyboard D key. And that's just a regular scale there. And we also, again, if we said we're going to potentially use a gamepad, you could put a plus in here. And this one would be the gamepad left thumbstick x-axis. And that's also going to be at a value of 1. So you can move right with any of those. And so really what you think about here is move right would have technically been the D key. But if you want to move left, you just go -1 by using the A. So -1 of move right is left. So you just put it all into the same thing. You know, technically this should have been called move left and right, or turn left and right, or whatever. But you know, they just simplify it by giving it these basic names. And you'll find that in most of the code because they're piggybacked off of these third-person projects or whatever. Most of them have the same mapping in them. So I would just recommend leaving them alone. But then the next one that we wanted to do, and again, after I put these in, I go over and typically get compile. And the last one here is move forward. So we go back in here, and one more axis mapping for move forward. And in our forward movement, this is our W key, which is moving us forward. So W, keyboard, W. Yep. Keyboard W, sorry. Keyboard, oh, I did it twice. Wow. Keyboard W. The key that could not be pressed. And that is on your scale of 1. And then if we want to move backward, same thing, you would just put a keyboard S in here. Keyboard S key. And you guessed it, that's the -1 value. And then if we were going to use a gamepad, again, you go in here and put, this would be for a gamepad, and this is going to be your gamepad left thumbstick on the y-axis with a scale of 1. If we go back here to Greystone and compile, all of those things should go away. And we can close our project settings for now. But if we go back into the Soul Cave and hit play, we should now have the ability to turn our camera left and right and up and down. And again, I know this is kind of dark in here. Let's move them into the light. If I hit the W key, I'll be able to run forward. All right. And I can look around the character. Hit the space bar, my character jumps. A, S, D, W moves him around. Now this character by default has some attack buttons inside of it. So if I hit the left mouse button one time, he swings. If I double left click it, he does a combo. And if I triple left click, he does a third move. Okay. And this character, you know, as you move through here, if you've never been inside a Soul Cave before, if you go down into Soul Cave a little bit here, there is an area you can get into. This area has a set of steps. You go up this flight of stairs and through the area here, and you'll come up to this old ancient spot here. Okay, we're going to call it the old ancient spot. Now in our setup here, you can see there's a lot of stuff going on. That there's collision and stuff is a little wacky up here because this object isn't really set up for you to be up here just yet. We can fix all these types of things, and it looks like our character might have some foot placement issues as far as how far down the ground he is. Yeah, this just isn't optimized for what we're doing just yet, but we can fix a lot of these things. And we'll also want to put some IK onto the character, which means that we should be able to enable a plug-in that'll take care of that. But we'll be fixing all this kind of stuff in a very, very short time period in one of the next episodes coming up in our Getting Started RPG series. But one more thing I want to do before I do anything else is I'm going to escape right here, shift escape, and I'm going to hit F11. And in my F11 section here, what I also want to do is go and get under quadruped creatures. We have our mountain dragon, and he has a mesh in here. And so I want to drag that mountain dragon out into this little area and kind of get a preview of what he's going to look like in here. See if he's too big or too small or whatever. Yeah, it'll look like he's probably going to be just fine. Grab a hold of him and turn him around a little bit. And what we can do is, with that mountain dragon, we can create a blueprint of him for being a character. And so we'll just right click. Oh, and I just deleted something other than the dragon. So we'll delete the dragon. And I'm going to go in the mountain dragon section here, right click and say blueprint class. And I want that to be an actor, or it could be a pawn or a character. Let's do a character. And we'll call this mountain dragon. And in the mountain dragon, for our capsule, for our mesh rather, we can come in here under the skeleton, type in mountain, and you'll find the dragon. Bring him in. And all we want to do with him is turn him so that he's facing that negative 90 degrees there, which is putting him in line with the arrow. And then also, as I said before, we want to go to perspective and look at him from the front. And we want to bring his feet down. Just like that there. We want to bring his feet down so that he kind of touches to the bottom of that capsule. Let's see where his actual feet are. It's probably more like right in here. Negative 80, negative 90-ish. Compile and save that. Go back out to the mesh, and we're just going to go in here and say use an animation asset that comes with this character. And we'll pull up a basic idle. We're going to be building animation blueprints for all these later, but here's just a basic idle look around. So he'll be sitting there in the level playing that animation. So we'll go back here and drop him into the world again. And if I hit right click, I'm going to say play from here. What I should see is that our dragon is now in the level. And I'll just zoom up, and he's just looking around now, waiting for us to come up here and try and take any of his gold. Okay, and he's sitting there on the floor, and he's just playing that basic anim. Now later on he'll have AI, he'll be able to move around, he'll come and try to attack us, you know. And again, our mission is going to be to find a weapon like this, come in here and try and attack this dragon and, you know, beat him and take his gold. So that's why we brought in some of these extra props also, because we have, also in here we have our ancient treasures. So if you go and you look at all the different meshes that are in here, you have all these little trinkets and treasures that this dragon could have. For example, a couple of gold piles could be out here in the world. We can tilt those down a little bit and push them into the ground. And they should look like pile of gold spilled on there. Let the shaders come in, say. Now, the way you can also do some of this too is if you want to duplicate these. I'm working in a very small window here, so I apologize. But if you want to duplicate these, what you can do is you can hold the Alt key and drag off of these. So by releasing and dragging with Alt, you can create duplicates of these meshes. So I go in here and create like little piles of gold, and I could put like little, you know, chests out here. And we could turn on physics on these, which would allow them to just drop onto the ground, but I'm just going to set them this way for now, just kind of give you a little decorative taste of what I'm talking about here. And, dragons like their gold, so there'd be tons and tons of treasure that this thing has hoarded over the years. He's got these big chests and stuff that we could come in and steal from, loot stuff. Basically the same chest there. And, we'll go in and we'll tweak all these things later on, but you get the general idea. We're going to populate some things in here that he would have stored up, and some gems and all kinds of wonderful, wonderful things. That might be a little too far into the ground. It's a small gem. He likes gold bars. This will all be stuff you can just decorate and play with as you go. And again, if I hit play from here, right click, play from here, my character will be right there, and there's your shiny pile of gold you'll be able to pick up. There's treasure chests there and gems you can find. I guess I could have hit those to the ground. I didn't think they would stay, but looks like if I hit the end key, they will go right to the surface. Now they're a little too low, say. Now, if you have something like that where you can't find it anymore because you've done what I just did, which is push it in the ground, which you could do over here, those items will not be inside of your folders because we didn't put them in there. So they should just be down here at the bottom. There should be like a little gold bar. You can pull this back up until you just see the top of it. And see that snapping? That's what's causing that issue. You can take that snap off of there, and now you can lay it right onto the surface if you want. And same thing with that gem. You just pull that gem up just so it's above the surface. And play from here. And it'll look pretty good. Okay? So we'll be back into this pretty soon. We'll start making all these kinds of things functional where we can go in here and actually fight this guy and get skills and points and all that kind of good stuff. We're going to have to build components for his health. We're going to have to put health bars on here and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned, and we will be coming back at this very, very soon. Looking forward to the series with you guys, and thanks for all your votes. And if you are interested in supporting the channel, I put some links up there for some new things I've added with Patreon and PayPal links and all that kind of good stuff. Not required, always appreciated. My name again is TC, made with TC Gaming, and I'll catch you in another video coming out very, very soon. Take care.